years. The Himalayan consensus as an idea whose time has come began more than a decade ago. And it really began when a number of social entrepreneurs working in different locations of the Himalayan region came together. At the time, I was running a social enterprise in Lhasa involving heritage restoration, which all of our sites are on solar powered, and everything there is made by workshops for the handicapped and involving local materials and people and eventually local ownership. But it was one social enterprise. So I'm the original 7 years in Tibet. I lived there for about 7 years. And then we worked with other social entrepreneurs who all had a set of common strands. They were trying to protect their culture. They were trying to protect in turn their culture, local culture protected environment, because environmental themes were core to their heritage. And each of them had to do it through a business. So there had to be a business model that was earning money through the protection of heritage and environment. Those simple strands came together as the concept able to scale it. And third, recognizing that environment is not only something to be protected as our main priority. So now the new focus on that connectivity is smart green and blue. Using new technologies that weren't there 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago when the reforms began, 40 years ago, and now applying those to creating, road systems where you have decentralized energy, where every lamp post has its own solar panel, looking at the centralization of energy in cities, looking at smart ecological villages, where people don't want to necessarily leave their village and migrate to the cities because they have opportunity, they have business, and they have a very pleasant environment. And so rethinking the economic model.
Now, our work on connectivity is, at the moment, is mainly focused on three areas. One is, of course, road connectivity, where we are looking at the motor vehicles agreement. These are all instruments, and we are also looking at various road connectivity initiatives. We are also looking at various waterways connectivity, including coastal shipping agreement between India and Bangladesh and Indian waterways. We are also looking at energy connectivity within the BVI region, and particularly cross-border energy trade potential, etc. Now, from all these things which we have been doing over the last 3-4 years, and our plan is to have a much longer horizon work framework on all these issues. There are mainly 4 or 5 things, important things which have come up so far. That there are connectivity gaps, and there is absolutely no doubt that there are gaps, whether we look at it road or rail or waterways or anything. Secondly, when you look at all these initiatives, including from initiatives from multilateral agencies like World Bank or IFC, Asian Development Bank, including bilateral agencies like JICA, they are looking at all these things more from infrastructure development point of view, and less from what will be the impact on environment, what will be the impact on livelihood of local people, so, and including gender implications of all these initiatives. So we are having much more focus on livelihood and gender implications of all these initiatives, and talking to all these agencies looked at. Another interesting thing which we have found, that there is very little identity on the part of the people on the ground with all these initiatives.
ICS connects and informs government institutions, academia, business and the strategic community in India and overseas on developments in China, India-China relations and East Asia. In India, it is the only institution that brings together China experts on a regular basis through multiple fora. United Nations ESCAP estimate says remedial measures may push the regional trade to as high as $170 billion by 2020. Lack of connectivity is a major reason behind low interregional trade in South Asia, and unleashing connectivity seems to be central to the various subgroups in the region. And forum like Himalayan Consensus can play a crucial role to discuss specific regarding the problems to achieve connectivities or which are the best substitutes, alternatives and solutions, especially when international fundraising, which given the present connectivity deficit, is a considerable challenge.
Trying to understand the theorization or the conceptualization of what is border, what are regions, be it geographic, be it national, or be it social, sub-regional. How do we actually conceptualize something? And when I talk about conceptualizing, I think historicizing comes immediately into picture, that it's true that young members are trying to experiment with so many different ideas. Every generation comes up with amazing new ideas with their own lessons and failures, and then that takes the agenda to the next level. But then it's also important to understand that any generation is, no generation is the first generation. There have already been so many things that have been experimented, tried, and lessons learned over the course of decades and a half, centuries. And so when you think about the Himalaya, so many theorizations have been in place over a long period of time, and I feel that any new initiative would probably benefit from reminding ourselves of the short and long history of sorts. What do we mean by South Asia? And I think this question it has some relevance in terms of understanding what is Himalaya, to be seen from within Himalaya but also from outside. I think
we are a international development organization. We work out of 18 countries in Asia, and we do different things in different countries. In India, around 80% of our portfolio is dedicated to this idea of South Asian integration. And that's because we do see connectivity and regional integration as a developmental problem. Because by the time countries hit around $1,200 to $1,500 per capita, growth doesn't come without significant trade, and trade doesn't come without connectivity. And so if hitherto there hasn't been a lot of energy allocated to attaining some degree of regional connectivity in South Asia, it's perhaps a reflection of our own developmental reality. We weren't perhaps in that range where connectivity becomes really, really important. Of course, there are countries in South Asia like Sri Lanka which are almost hitting the middle income trap rather than the connectivity hurdle for this issue. And my own observation has been this whole geography of SAARC has been sort of a colonial holdover. And there are a lot of practical problems around constructing this kind of regional economic bloc. And so it's not so much that our leaders haven't done enough or we haven't done enough. The geography itself has a problem. But there is so much pent-up energy around constructing these avenues for connections in South Asia, and whether or not the governments are moving, you can see that the civil society organizations are moving faster. There are issues like electricity trade where the governments are moving faster than the think tanks. There are issues like water where the governments have basically sat on their hands for 40 years, whereas the NGOs have been talking about doing more and more. So it's a very complex terrain. There's a lot of development around sciences. Climate itself is changing. A lot of that knowledge isn't coming into our style of water management. So there's a lot to do here, and there are lots of science-based organizations and civil society organizations which have really progressed in the last 30 or 40 years. But that progress is not reflected either at the geopolitical level or even at the water management.
This is a multiple platform we are talking about as Himalayan Consensus. We are talking about a platform on environment, on technology, on business, economy, on people, and I think education was something added. That's one piece we are looking at. We are also looking at there are multiple players. There are public players, there are private players, but there are citizen players also. There are citizen organization, people-to-people organization that are doing already something, and how do we put that together? I just picked up some of the words that Srimati brought about, and I think I tried to put it into 3 Ps. And to talk about pluralism, talk about practicality, and talk about people. And I think that's a key lesson I'm taking from here. And I think when we are talking about connectivity, we are talking also about the tangible connectivity, and we are talking about the intangible connectivity. And I think when we discuss connectivity, we tend to get caught into the tangible part of it, but then there's the intangible side of culture, of heritage, of so many other things. And I think youth was a big piece that was coming out and Malika was emphasizing, and I think that's something that the Himalayan Consensus really realizes. So one of the things, the third day of our the Himalayan Consensus Summit this year, 2018, is a half day at the EC Mode premises, along with the Himalayan University Consortium, a program of EC Mode, bringing in youth leaders from the region and to talk about exactly what Vipul is saying. What are the innovative stuff they're doing? What are the great things they're doing? And to share. And perhaps then media will pick it up, and there will be social media and others who will, sort of try to push this further.